The time is just gone 20 minutes past 9 as we continue with the broadcast on News and Views this morning. If you have just tuned in, I am Inayat Wadi, and as we continue our focus on Gaza, as we have been doing for the last 77 days, it's been non-stop, it's been relentless, and we need to continue. We must continue. We have to continue talking about Gaza and also all the other related issue. Now, one thing we've come to terms with is we see that there is this divide, there is this total disconnect between the masses on the ground and the ruling elite and governments in a particular. And Gaza, we said it before, is going to change the way the world looks at things, the way we look at things politically right across the entire world. We know that there are many elections that are taking place next year in South Africa, in particular. Gaza has been a major talking point. We've seen political parties taking a position, making a statement, and also at the same time, we get to grips with the realities of some of these political parties. They're going to become part and parcel of the electioneering campaign. Is going to be a major talking point in the United States of America right now. We see the presidential candidates and the presidential hopefuls talking about Gaza. All of this taking place, and just to unpack and to discuss what all of this means and how we read into the situation is Dr. Anas Al Tikriti joining us out of London this morning, the CEO and founder of the Cordoba Foundation. Dr. Anas, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As always, welcome and Jazakallah for your time.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother Inayat. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Yes, Dr. Anas, in my introduction, as I alluded to, Gaza becoming a political hot potato right across the entire world, and I'm sure it is noticeable. We see what's happening in the US, and I'm sure even in other parts of Western Europe.
Everywhere. Only yesterday I was attending a seminar of experts, and we noted the fact that this tiny part of the world, if you were to open the world atlas, you wouldn't be able to see Gaza, but this almost tiny, almost insignificant in terms of size, part of the world atlas has impacted every single point that we can point to on that atlas, and yes, including the United States, including here in the UK, including across Europe, everywhere in the entire world. Nowhere in the world can now claim to be untouched by what has been happening for the past 76 days.
Yes, and also looking at the level of support for Gaza, the masses right across the entire world, it's been unprecedented. And the point I also made is this disconnect between the masses and the political elite.
Yes, it's it's quite ironic. I've lectured on political studies for nigh on 20 years, 25 years. And one of the things I always mention is when we're talking about the Middle East, which is my specialty, we have to recognize that there is a disparity between the people and between their regimes. The ambitions and aspirations and hopes and even narratives of the people is totally different and almost disconnected from that. The positions of independence, of failure, to be honest, of corruption and the such of their regimes. And the fascinating thing is that I've lived long enough, brother Inayat, to actually see the same happen here in Europe, in the hotbed and the bastion of democracy, as well as in North America and across the world, where now we're saying the same thing. We're saying that the policies of the United States of America, the policies of the United Kingdom, the policies of several European countries has very little connection with the aspirations and the narratives and the demands and the expectations of their people. And indeed, what we're seeing right now is a rush almost. You know, only if we had spoken just a few days ago, the theme of what we would have been talking about was why was it that no leader of any Western country was calling for an end to violence, which is something that everyone would have seen to be very reasonable, quite demanding in light of the tragedy that was unfolding, the genocide that was being committed. Yet now it seems like everyone has seen the light. Everyone has awakened to the fact that there has been blood spilled innocent children killed, that a major genocide has been happening, and now almost everyone is now calling for a ceasefire. And the main reason is that, as you said in your introduction, we are approaching quite significant elections, whether with you in South Africa, whether with me in the United Kingdom, whether in America, the year of the elections, where Joe Biden's popularity has been plummeting ever since the 7th of October. So people are realizing that not only has Israel failed, despite the brutality, despite the bestiality of its operation for the past 76 days, failed to achieve a single military objective. But the fact is that this is going to impact world politics. It's going to have governments and heads of states tumble down and their careers end in shame. We know that Netanyahu is clinging on for dear life for his own freedom. We know that as soon as this is over, Netanyahu will see the inside of the court more times than he had probably seen his own offices as prime minister. We know all that. But now the price is Joe Biden, the price is Rishi Sunak, as well as the opposition, which was a sure thing here at the Labour Party just 2.5 months ago. It was a sure thing. It was leading in the polls by more than 22, 23 points. It was just a matter of time before Keir Starmer became prime minister. But all of a sudden, because of the idiotic statements that he made early on, he has seen that gap also fall. And now independent candidates, their popularity is rising. Other parties, fringe parties at best, are seeing more and more people come to them from the Tories and from the Labour. So political realities are changing. And all of this is because of Gaza. People are holding their politicians to a new benchmark, a new set of principles. People are asking now for their morality as well as for their humanity.
Yes, Dr. Anas, these policies of these governments have been horribly exposed as a result of the genocide in Gaza. And I recall someone mentioning and saying that Gaza has got the potential of determining what a new world order would look like. And we see the reality on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the kind of discussions that we're seeing and the outpour of public support. This is, Brother Inayat, almost all my life, I've been, working for the Muslim community, particularly here in the UK and across Europe. But all of a sudden now I find myself absolutely on the same page with, my brothers, the British citizens from across the board, cultural, ethnic, faith, and the such, because there is such a popular movement, a widespread, wide-reaching, popular movement exposing the inhumanity. All of a sudden, people have realized something. Palestine was always seen as a foreign issue. And people like myself were seen as people who were campaigning for something that had little to do with the concerns of the pensioners here in the UK, or the people who are struggling with everyday living, with the cost of living crisis, with living expenses and all of these things, which was to an extent true. It is a foreign case. But all of a sudden, we are seeing millions of people who are, many of whom are apolitical. They're not heavily involved in campaigning or activism or the such, discover that their politicians who are encouraging Israel to continue its campaign of slaughtering babies and targeting women and civilian installations and schools and the such, those same politicians cannot be trusted with trying to find a resolution to the cost of living crisis here in the UK. They cannot be trusted with treating pensioners and the ill and the NHS, the National Health Service, with a degree of humanity that should be expected of politicians. So all of a sudden, those politicians are being held to benchmarks and to criteria determined by what's happened in Gaza, in order to lead here in the UK. And the same goes across, European countries as well as North America. We're seeing a different style of narrative. And myself, I've been, a political activist for 30 years probably. And I have to say, this is something that I've never, ever seen before in terms of momentum, in terms of the ceiling, the high ceiling of the narrative, and the kind of demands being made of politicians and as such. It's totally unprecedented.
Dr. Anas, I'm going to ask you to just bear with us. I'm going to go for an ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two.
Day by day. This is Salam Media.
For a long time, we've lived in a centralized world where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice you'll make.
When you give water, you're reaching out to drought-affected areas, bringing them to life. Fresh water to drink, to clean, and to grow. That's the power of water. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Help us ease the hunger burdens of those in need by donating to the Sanzaf Meals Project. For just 12 Rand, you can provide a freshly prepared meal to an individual, and with your commitment to a monthly contribution, we can reach out to even more communities and deserving individuals. Call us on 011 834 6046 to learn more about this life-changing initiative. Sanzaf, changing lives through development and relief.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
At 9:33 a.m., we continue with our discussion with Dr. Anas Al-Tikriti, CEO and founder of the Cordoba Foundation, taking a look at Gaza and the changing political landscape right across the entire world and changing the political dynamics of many a country right across the entire world. Dr. Anas, just to continue, and when we talk about unprecedented, Gaza has been unprecedented in more ways than one, and we see it right across the entire world, despite the political establishment, despite the draconian measures that they want to take. People are not listening to them. We've seen them come out in the streets. They try to stop protests. They try to stop, anything relating to Palestine. Yet people are bold. People are in defiance mode at this point in time, even to the extent where we've seen a number of gatherings where many of these high-ranking politicians have been openly challenged. We've seen people come out, gate crash, for want of a better term, some of these events that have been taking place. So the lines have been clearly drawn that this is an open challenge, and people are prepared to do that and go, at any length to do what they need to.
The fact of the matter, Brother Inayat, is that Gaza has been the epitome of the world's failure. And not just now. Gaza has been the epitome of the world's failure for nigh on 17 years. Nowhere in the world in modern times have we seen a treatment delivered to a population of 2.5 million like we've seen in Gaza. The fact that it has been boarded off, sealed off, under siege for 17 years, where people have been denied the very basic right that we all take for granted. We wake up in the morning and we decide to go somewhere. We decide to take a break this coming weekend. We decide to travel to a nearby town and to visit friends and family. It's something that we don't even think twice about. It doesn't need much planning. It doesn't need much preparation. But for the people of Gaza, that very simple thing has been denied to them. And we're talking about 17 years. You know, many of the people that are resisting the occupation today are of that age. They have known nothing else. All that they've known their entire life is living under siege, where their fate, what they eat, what they drink, how they move, how they learn, how they go to university, how they treat their ill or the such is dictated by outside powers. And that, I believe, has come to a boil, has come to a position whereby, you know, the world has idiotically, stupidly, naively, has violated one of the major rules of engagement that I, as a non-military person, read about when I was 14 years old. And that is, in any conflict, in any war, in any engagement with your adversary, with your enemy, you never corner them. You never shut off or close down all avenues of exit. You have to have an exit strategy. You have to leave them something to live for, something that is worth negotiating for. In the case of Gaza, stupidly, not only Israel, but the entire world has decided to corner them in a way where they have left them nothing to lose. There is nothing for the people of Gaza to lose. You know, when people ask the question, well, you know, why did the 7th of October happen, and wouldn't have the people of Gaza been better off no, they wouldn't have been better off. They would have been still living as caged rats and hamsters, like the world decided that they should live. And therefore, they have come to a point where nothing matters, where now the reverberations of their response is now worldwide, is now going to impact, I believe, indelibly, permanently, the international world order and the way in which the powers that be, the imperial powers of the West, as well as the colonial powers, such as Israel, such as the example that we had in South Africa up until the 90s, is seen as an evil element. And that's something which I believe is extremely telling. And to be perfectly honest, I think that, you know, there was a comment made by someone recently that I found was extremely intelligently. When asked about the 7th of October and was that not an act of extreme violence, and was that not a crime and all of that? And his response was this. He said, for the past 17 years at least, because before that they weren't living, you know, like people live in Los Angeles or San Francisco. They were living under occupation like the rest of Palestine. He said, for at least 17 years, the people of Gaza have been spoken to through the language of violence. So on the 7th of October, they responded to the world in the only language that they have been spoken to, i.e. the language of violence. And it makes absolute sense. The world has failed Gaza, Brother Inayat. We all know this. We've been speaking now for years, haven't we, about Gaza, about the siege of Gaza. The United Nations has issued resolution after resolution about the illegality of that siege. Countless flotillas and convoys and individuals and activists have tried to break the siege. And the world has turned a deaf ear towards all of those calls. So ultimately, the people of Gaza responded. And now it doesn't matter how violent, how rabid Israel is in terms of attacking Gaza. It just doesn't matter. The people of Gaza will withstand this. They will resist. And you know what? the dreams of driving them off Gaza into the desert, into Sinai or anywhere else will not succeed. People will say, kill me here. Why should I die in a foreign desert when I could die over the rubble of my home with the slain bodies of my children? So, just kill me here. So there is no way that Gaza can be wiped off the map. There is no way that Palestinian resistance can be quelled, particularly in the manner that Israel, through its absolute idiocy, is, as well as crime. Obviously, idiocy is the least of its bad traits. Will achieve its objectives.
Dr. Ernest, is interesting when we speak about worth negotiating and as far as Gaza is concerned. And I just want to shift a bit of focus looking at the Arab world and the Muslim world and the political consequences for the Muslim world in their position and in their stance as far as Gaza is concerned. And we know with Hamas, a lot of focus is on the military wing of Hamas. And very little attention, even paid by the Arab world, was on the political bureau as far as Hamas is concerned. And we know a lot of it obviously stemming from the Ikhwan ideology, the Ikhwan influence that has been on Hamas, people like Ismail Haniyeh, and we've even seen in the case of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt. But we hear now of the presence of Ismail Haniyeh being welcomed even in Egypt to start talks, to start negotiations, and to an extent now giving recognition to Hamas with its Ikhwan ideology, giving recognition to Hamas and the political bureau as a solution.
Well, firstly, I think once again, taking from the point that we mentioned a few minutes ago regarding the status of Arab regimes, and Egypt is no exclusion, no exception of that particular rule. Unfortunately, there's a blanket failure on behalf of the Arab regimes, and particularly the Arab countries that surround Gaza and surround Palestine. And I mentioned here Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, of course, as well as Egypt. And let's not forget, one of the main reasons why Gaza is sealed off is because of Egypt. And because of the Rafah border, there's no question Egypt is complicit in the crime that has been perpetrated against the people of Gaza now for a decade and a half at least. The fact that Egypt is hosting these current talks is simply a trade exchange. Egypt has benefited to the tune of billions every single year because of its policing of Gaza and its role in prolonging the suffering of the Palestinians. And we must never mistake the fact that Ismail Haniyeh or others in the past, many, many times, have been received with welcoming smiles and on red carpets or the such. We must never mistake that for any kind of sincerity in wanting to resolve the suffering of the Palestinian people. Egypt, let me be slightly cynical, but not too cynical, slightly cynical here, and say Egypt has no interest whatsoever in seeing an end to the Palestinian suffering. Egypt, if Palestine is free and an independent state, Egypt and democratic, God forbid, democratic, Egypt stands to the Egyptian regime, stands to lose financially and stands to even lose politically. And that's something that it will never allow to happen. And therefore, the first ceasefire that we saw a few weeks ago that was brokered by the Qataris was something that upset the Egyptians to no end, because all of a sudden it was the Qataris who were playing the major role in doing this, and they lost out. They could have negotiated billions of dollars to broker this thing, but the Qataris jumped earlier, and therefore they took guard. So this time around, the Egyptians said nothing's going to happen without us being at the head of the table, and that's why the talks are now in Egypt. So we mustn't mistake, welcoming Hamas first of all as a change in Sisi's regime their heart in respect to either the Ikhwan or any political adversary. It doesn't matter, Ikhwan or other Ikhwan. Anyone who challenges their grip on power. We must never ever mistake these talks as being a sincere intent of Egypt to resolve the issue of Gaza, to resolve the issue of Palestine. We must never ever mistake this as being some sort of, Egypt taking the lead. Egypt doesn't take the lead. Egypt, when asked why is it not allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza, when the UN Secretary General demanded that those trucks be allowed, their answer was, well, Israel didn't authorize us to open the border. The border is on their land, on their sovereign land. Yet, clearly, they were waiting for a green light, for an okay from Israel to do so. So we must understand the dynamics that are happening here. And we must understand the restrictions that are imposed on the Palestinians, regardless of them being Hamas or otherwise. Hamas is a national liberation movement. In the Arab world today and the Middle East, generally speaking, such movements are seen as existential threats. Existential threats. So they are used as much as possible by regimes such as Egypt in order to milk the cow and to gain political and financial credit. But they're never ever allowed to thrive. They're never ever allowed to dictate how their own causes, their own people are governed.
Dr. Anas, I wish we had a lot more time. In fact, there's just so much more that you can unpack for us this morning. But sadly, time is of the essence. But once again, Jazakallah to you. We do appreciate you taking time out, as always, with us here on Salam Media. And we wish you all the best, inshallah. Allah accept, Allah reward your efforts. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, my dear brother Inayat. And it's always a pleasure coming back and talking to you and addressing your audience. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Have a great day. Thank you.
Dr. Anas Al Tikriti, CEO and founder of the Cordoba Foundation, with us this morning. And after the break, we're going across to be joined by Fairuz Mohammed, National Chairperson of the South African National Zakah Fund.